Hello, and welcome back to my channel. A little while ago, we did a video on horror movies that I rewatch constantly. And by constantly, I mean like I pick a horror movie that I love, based on whatever my gut tells me to, and I pretty much watch it on loop for the next couple of days, sometimes even weeks. But today what we're going to talk about is the movies that kind of have the exact opposite effect on me. Horror movies that actually gave me nightmares. And I don't necessarily mean nightmares when I was a kid, I mean nightmares as an adult. I watched them after I turned 20, and they gave me nightmares even still. Yes, I will admit right now that I am a giant weenie, but some of these movies are genuinely scary, okay? So I have managed to narrow it down to the top 5 movies that have given me nightmares as an adult, with number 5 being sort of the least scary, and number 1 being the movie that all I have to do is think about it and I have nightmares. Great, now I have nightmares. Number 6 would be an honorable mention, and that would be the Autopsy of Jane Doe. I find this movie really scary pretty much just because I don't like dead bodies and I don't like morgues. So the whole atmosphere in the first half of the movie I found to be very scary, and I sat here like shaking it watching it. But I didn't have nightmares, and kind of as we get a little bit farther into that movie and they explain sort of who Jane Doe is and they sort of figure it out, then I found it less scary. So that would be my honorable mention, but let's get to the actual list now with number 5. Number 5 is the only movie on this list that is sort of a more real world fear. And so with that in mind, I knew when I went into watching this movie that it had the potential to be like scarring, and I would have nightmares for weeks or maybe months when I watched it. So I only kind of let myself half watch it, and that's probably why technically The Strangers never actually gave me nightmares, because I wanted to say that I had seen it, but I knew if I sat here and I very intensely watched it the way I do with so many other movies, I would be ruined for the rest of my life. Because already as a small, young female, especially one who has a bone disorder, you know, that sort of break and enter idea is absolutely terrifying, and it's a very real world fear. Everything that happens in a movie just happens because they were there. That's it. And that's what makes it terrifying. So when I watched it, I did other stuff at the same time. I was painting, I was playing my Switch, I was doing other stuff so that I was following the story, but like not too into it, just to kind of save my own psyche. But The Strangers is a very scary movie, especially if you're already a little bit afraid of the idea of people just coming to your house and attacking you for no reason. So that one gets my number 5 spot. Everything beyond this point is more sort of fantastical, whimsy, paranormal type fears, but The Strangers at number 5 had the potential to be the worst of the worst, and that's why I kind of didn't let it. I kind of blocked myself off from that. Number 4 is a movie called Hell House. Now, I mention Hell House in my movies that I watch on loop because I desensitized myself to it by watching it because it's such a fantastic movie, but the first couple times I watched it, it actually did give me nightmares, just because of the sort of dummies and the animatronics and stuff, you know, turning to look at the camera and look at the characters by themselves. I have a lot of figures and stuff in my room, so that sort of idea freaked me out a little bit. You know, it gets 3 o'clock in the morning and you're all tired and you're like, everything in here is looking at me. But with that being said, you know, it's not the sort of underlying premise of Hell House that scares me. It was just the sort of practical effects in the actual movie, the animatronics, the creepy clowns turning and looking, of course, the one big jump scare with the first character to go, pretty much. That one gets me. But this movie I found to be creepy scary, but not as outright terrifying as some of the other ones on this list. Number 3 is Blair Witch. Blair Witch is one of the first sort of horror movies I ever watched. I was probably 18 when I saw it, and I watched it with a friend of mine on Halloween, actually. And I mean, it's a good thing I'm in a wheelchair because I was never going to hike to begin with, but if I was ever the hiking type, this movie would have talked me out of it. Blair Witch is the most iconic found footage type film for a reason, because it is so well done and so well executed, and it truly does make you feel like you're just watching a video that your friends shot. And that's what makes it scary. And to me, the parts that gave me like nightmares was the very last scene in the movie when she ends up in the house. It's just so creepy, and you can almost put yourself in that situation a little too easily, of the creepy house looking for your friends, and then it all kind of goes sour. I don't know, I don't like it, and just the image of the one guy standing in the corner, something about that just got to me, and it freaked me out, and I didn't sleep very well for the following week. Number 2, this movie is scary, and this is just the first Conjuring movie. Not any of the sequels, not any of the branches, just the first Conjuring. This was actually the first horror movie that I ever saw in theaters. I wanted to see this movie because I heard it was really good, but I also wanted to see it because I love Vera Farmiga. I've always had a giant crush on Patrick Wilson, And Lily Taylor is probably one of the most underrated actresses of her sort of generation, because everything I have ever seen her in, she is so convincing. I never look at her in a movie or in a TV show or whatever and think this is an actress playing a character. It's just the character, because she's never anything short of flawless. So when I sort of knew that she was going to be the mom in this movie who gets sort of possessed, I knew that I was in for some scares. One of the scariest movie concepts to me is sort of the idea of a family moving to a house and not realizing that that house is messed up, and then therefore that family becoming messed up as a result of the house. Sort of the Amityville horror type thing. Amityville doesn't make it on my list, but that sort of idea, because, you know, you can so unknowingly end up moving into a house that's haunted or whatever, and then that's it. You're screwed after that. And to me, it's just this very nice family, and they move into the house and it completely ruins their lives. And there is one particular scene that used to and still gives me nightmares. And it's tiny baby Joey King, because she's in this movie, she's very young, and she's laying in bed, and the demon witch thing, you can't see her, but she's like pulling on Joey King's legs while Joey King's in bed, and pulling the covers down, and then eventually when Joey King freaks out and wakes up, she can see the demon behind the door and nobody else can. And to this day, sometimes when it's like 3 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep, I feel like I can see the demon behind my door. Like, and that is her fault, that is this movie's fault, and I am a 26-year-old lady. I am closer to 30 than I am to 20, and that scene still scares me. I still feel like I can see it behind my door. Between that and the ghost doing the clap game, like, that is too much for me. Like, it's too much for me. And I even recently rented this movie on Amazon. That's the level that we got to. Because I was like, maybe it's not as scary anymore now that I've seen a whole bunch of other horror movies. And nope, it's still just as scary now that I've seen other horror movies, and it still freaked me out. So The Conjuring is a phenomenal film. I will not argue that. But it scares me. It scares me so much. Ooh, and then the scene with Judy in the lake. I don't like that either. I also don't like bodies in water. I don't like that. I mean, and when I say I don't like that, like, it freaks me out. I'll watch a movie where that happens, but it freaks me out. And my number one movie that gives me nightmares, all I have to do is think about it and it gives me nightmares, and has been this way since I was like, 8 years old? I think this movie came out in 2002, and obviously I did not watch it then, but I have older sisters, and they didn't watch it either, but they watched Much Music and MTV and that sort of thing, and the commercials played for it all the time. So it got to a point where all I have to do is hear, and I'm petrified. I've sort of always been a little bit afraid of Kayako, obviously, from The Grudge, which is what I'm talking about. But I had no idea what the actual story of the movie was, or, you know, how scary it was. So a couple of years ago, I'm talking like probably 2 years ago, I decided to watch this movie myself to see if it was actually scary. And it is. One of the scariest things to me about this movie is the fact that Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, what is she? I can't really remember because I only watched it the one time, and that was enough. But she's like a home care worker or something, right? And all she does is go to the older lady's house to help her because she's a home care worker, and that's all it takes, because in The Grudge, all you have to do is go in the house and you're cursed. So she's like doing her job and goes to the house, and that's it. Like, you're done. That's so scary to me. That is so scary. So even still, if I move the cover on my bed, I can imagine like Kayako under the comforter. I can imagine I hear the sound sometimes when I freak myself out. Like, that movie truly terrified me. Sometimes I'm afraid of washing my hair. So after I watched that movie, I watched the second one. The second one also freaked me out, not as bad as the first one. And I have to admit, I did watch the recent Netflix series release, the Ju-on Origins show. It didn't scare me, the Origins show, at all. But I think a lot of that has to do with the timeline in the show, because the timeline jumps around so much. I kind of had a hard time following it, so I was lost half the time, and it's kind of hard to be scared of a show when you're lost. The original Japanese movie, Ju-on, is on Amazon Prime Video, and I keep going to watch it and then chickening out, because what if it's scarier than the American one? You know, I've seen The Ring didn't give me nightmares, and I watched the Japanese version of The Ring, and it didn't give me nightmares. But what if the Japanese version of The Grudge is scarier, and it just makes an already bad situation worse? So maybe someday I will gather my bravery and I will watch it, but until that day comes, I am not watching it because it's terrifying. And anyway, I guess those are the top 5 movies that freak me out, that scare me, that either have given me nightmares or almost gave me nightmares, even though I'm a 26-year-old lady. What movies do you find absolutely terrifying? I would love to know, just so that I know that I'm not the only adult who gets freaked out by movies still. And I want to be very clear that I still love horror movies. And I understand that all the movies on this list are fantastic movies. All of them are fantastic movies. They just, each of them have a little something that triggers nightmares in me. So for that reason, I will probably, never watch any of them again unless I have to. I do rewatch Hell House all the time because I do like it and I desensitize myself to that. But like The Grudge, that's not happening. I'm not watching that one anymore. And yeah, so make sure you let me know what you thought of this video and some of your favorite horror movies or ones that scare you in the comments below. And don't forget, if you do anything spooky this Halloween season, you tag me on Instagram at AbbyLaneGreen, ABBYLANEGREEN, so I can see it, because this year Halloween is a little bit different, but we have to do what we can and have fun anyway, right? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!